So devotees, Hare Krishna, welcome to our 49th, 49th session of Bhakti Vaibhava, Srimad Bhagavatam seminar. Yes, let us just get things ready here. While we're doing that, let us chant our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschyachadesh Tarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Right, so devotees, here we go. We're starting. We are in the fifth section, predictions from the Brahmins about Parikshit. And this is now the third session we've done actually on this group of verses. And it's from verse 15 to verse 31, but because we're going through it still, we got up to verse 28. Right. Verse 28. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the great philosopher son of Vyasadeva, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. Okay, just a sec. Verse 28, yeah. Where am I? Oh, Krishna. Life of fearlessness, okay. Right, so he's going to inquire about proper self-knowledge from Shukadeva, the son of Vyas, and then renounce everything. So Srila Prabhupada here in the purport, he compares material knowledge with philosophy, real philosophy, knowledge of oneself, knowledge of self-realization. And Prabhupada makes the very essential point: without self-realization, philosophy is dry speculation or a waste of time and energy. Srila Prabhupada had this way of just stating things which were true, but stating these things which for many, many people, just ordinary materialistic people, they're like shocking statements, saying that things which those people take very seriously are, as he says here, what was it? A waste of time and energy. I mean, that's a real double punch. A waste of time and a waste of energy. Yeah. But really that's the position of Krishna consciousness, that we have to realize ourselves, at the worst, at the least, we have to move in that direction. But actually, really speaking, we have to try to really realize ourselves, which means become devotees. And that means Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, Srimad Bhagavatam gives this. And as the purport, as Prabhupada says, by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, you get free from material attachment and enter into the kingdom of fearlessness, which, which is what the verse talks about. Renouncing material attachment, achieving a life of fearlessness. This is the gift of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. Becoming free from all these material things which hold us back and hold us down. And if we're not careful, they'll just suffocate us and smother us. Material attachment and fear, material fear. So Srimad Bhagavatam is required, because this material world, Prabhupada says, this material world is fearfulness. Its prisoners are always fearful, as within a prison house. This is an analogy, by the way. It's one of the official analogies. The material world is like a prison house. This is an analogy. Yeah. So in the prison house, you can't violate the rules and regulations. If they want you to work in some particular way, you cannot say, well, I'm not inclined like that. You can't do it because you're in prison. You're forced. Yeah. So material existence is like that, and full of fearfulness, and this fearfulness is called anxiety. Like, if you'll pardon the language, there's a saying, I saw. What's that? There was a bumper sticker I saw while I was a devotee, but many years ago. But since I've been a devotee, I don't know, 30 or 40 years ago probably, and the bumper sticker goes like this. And as I've asked already, please pardon my French. Life is a bitch, and then you die. Don't mind me. Yeah. In other words, life is really heavy. It's really demanding. It's just, there's no joy in it, and then you die. This is good cause for fearfulness. And so, of course, people who read, as Prabhupada said, people who read Srimad Bhagavatam, they become fearless. But people in material life who are fearful, they can't be blamed. At least they've got the intelligence to be fearful, and they're not like so many materialists, just let's go for it and just enjoy life and just really get into things in a big way, which is all craziness. At least the people who are fearful, they have the brains to see that this material world, well, life's a bitch. And then you die. What can you say? That is worthy of fearfulness. In fact, if you're not fearful of that, you're a fool. You're just simply a fool. But life is not meant for fearfulness. Life is meant for fearlessness on the spiritual platform. That's the point. On the spiritual platform. That, as the Bhagavatam says, I don't think we came across it yet, did we? But anyway, it's in these earlier chapters somewhere, that by rising and setting, the sun shortens the lifespans of everyone except the devotees. Because, on the physical level, of course, the devotees' material lifespans are shortened as time moves on. But in reality, on the actual true level, the spiritual level, the devotees, their lives are not shortened by the rising and the setting of the sun, because they are eternal, and the devotees know they're eternal, and they're working very hard to realize their eternality. Yes, so like this, the devotees are independent of time. They're independent of time, not just on the physical material level, but on the real spiritual level. And when they come to the time of death, and for them life is not just, a bitch or just, a very unpleasant thing. For the devotees, even though there are challenges in their lives in Krishna consciousness, but generally speaking, their lives are very blissful. Their lives are very blissful in Krishna consciousness, and then they die and go back to Godhead. So this is all good reason for fearlessness. Right. So, yes, so basically Prabhupada makes the point that by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we get free from material anxiety. And this is possible only when anxiety is changed to the devotional service of the Lord. Bhagavatam gives us the chance to change the quality of anxiety from matter to spirit. In other words, some anxiety will be there. Some anxiety will be there inevitably. But when the anxiety is for Krishna, to see that his service gets done as nicely as possible, then that anxiety is ecstasy. That anxiety is blissful. It's a contradiction, but it's not. It's a contradiction in a certain linguistic sense, but in terms of actual experience, it's not a contradiction. Yeah. So how do you do that? Change from material anxiety to spiritual anxiety. You must associate with people like Shukadev. This is what Prabhupada says here. Who is just a prime example of this point. That there he was ruling the world. Then he was told he had been cursed to die in 7 days. And so he went to the bank of the Ganges or Yamuna, was instructed by Shukadev Goswami, and became completely fearless. And finally, when the snake bird came to bite him, he was fearless. It wasn't at all like, oh no, it's going to happen now. Oh, what's dying going to be like? It wasn't like that. He was happy to go and meet the Lord, according to the arrangement of the Lord. So yeah, for the devotees, even when there's anxiety, there's fearlessness. Yeah, so okay, then the next paragraph, little paragraph, Srila Prabhupada talks about professional Bhagavatam reciters who they imitate, or try to imitate, the reciting and hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, and the foolish audience thinks they're being benefited, and they'll get free from material attachment, they'll become fearless. But unfortunately, Prabhupada says such imitative hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is a caricature only. Caricature basically means like a cartoon sort of thing, just some sort of distorted picture. Generally cartoons, they're not like works of art which portray the characters very precisely, at least when I was a child and I was reading. Anyway, let me just say, the Walt Disney comics. Yeah, they're just caricatures. They're not expressions of reality. So these people, yeah, they're reciting, they're hearing, the professionals, it's also a caricature. It's like a comic version of the real thing. So therefore we shouldn't be misled by that. That's very important. Okay. And listen to this. One should not be misled by such a performance of Bhagavatam Saptaha, undertaken by ridiculous, greedy fellows to maintain an establishment of material enjoyment. How does that sound? It's so heavy, isn't it? If the professional reciters read that, then who am I? What does Bhaktivedanta Swami say? Oh, I'm a ridiculous, greedy fellow trying to maintain an establishment of material enjoyment. But Prabhupada, sometimes he would be kind of diplomatic, but sometimes he'd really just get straight to the point. And that's an example. So, verse 29, thus, those who are expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed King Yudhisthira about the future history of the child. Yeah, they instructed Yudhisthira. Normally they'd instruct the father, but the father's dead. Abhimanyu died in the battle, so they're instructing Yudhisthira, who's the main grandfather. Not even directly grandfather, he was the son of Arjuna. But still, they were all in it together. Right, so let me just read the whole verse. Thus those who were expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed King Yudhisthira about the future history of the child. Then, being sumptuously remunerated, they all returned to their respective homes. Oops. Right, okay. Let's have a look at the purport here. Right, so These people were experts in astrology and related things. Actually, many of them were expert in just different things, but all of them, or so many of them, were expert in these things: astrology and birth ceremonies. Right, so, and Srila Prabhupada makes the point that actually the Vedic literatures, they are a storehouse of all types of knowledge, material and spiritual. All sorts of knowledge. Yeah. And so therefore the Vedas are the guides for civilized man in every respect. So Prabhupada makes the point right at the beginning there of the purport that the Vedas, they are a storehouse of knowledge, material and spiritual, just about everything. But actually the aim of them is self-realization. The aim is not just to, if you like spiritual life, then you'll find things for you. But if you like material life, you'll find things for you. Srila Prabhupada would say, actually talking about Bhagavad Gita, which summarizes all the Vedic literatures and the main processes presented in the Vedic literatures, Srila Prabhupada said that some people think that Bhagavad Gita is like a great transcendental box of assorted chocolates or assorted Diwali sweets. Did you ever? Anyway, it's okay. Yeah, assorted Diwali sweets or chocolates, depends on what culture you're coming from. But chocolates would mean, a box of assorted chocolates means some people like the one with the nuts in them. Some people like the one which has the mint center. Some people like the one which has the toffee center and it's very chewy. You get the idea? And if it's Diwali sweets, some like the burfi, some like the sandesh. I don't know if they do sandesh so much, but some like the laddu. Some like the laddu. Yes. I don't know if they put suji in, but if they do, some may like the suji. And if they're a little more, not sophisticated, but just more experienced in such things, then some may like the rasgulla, and some may like the rasmalai, and some rare souls may like the chum chum. Yes, anyway. So some people think that Bhagavad Gita, and you can apply it to Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's more particularly Bhagavad Gita, which mentions all these different processes: karma yoga, dhyana yoga, shat chakra yoga, ashtanga yoga. They're all mentioned, and different types of sacrifices, etc., etc. So some people think Bhagavad Gita is like a box of assorted sweets or chocolates, in which case someone would like what would you like, Kishore Prabhu? Definitely? The rough? Oh, the rasgulla. Kishore definitely wants the rasgulla. What would you have? Gaja halava. That's a good one. What would you have? Laddu. Okay. Well, I'm sure you know I would have the chum chum, but sometimes I would have the ras malai. Depends how it's done. If it's done well, it's pretty good. Yeah, so, but that's just a matter of their personal taste. It doesn't mean that the Gajja Halava is actually better on some absolute scale. I don't know how you'd exactly compare them. But, in reality, the the Gajja Halava is better than the burfi or whatever it might be. It just means you prefer it. That's all. But it's not an absolute standard. Yes, so some people think that Bhagavad Gita is like that, and they think that the Vedic literatures are like that, in general, in the broad sense. But actually they're not. The Vedic literatures are there for our self-realization. That's what they're there for. And anything else which seems to be the message is not exactly the message, but part of some step-by-step process to reach the message or to approach the message. This is the point. Right. So therefore, Prabhupada says human life has to be guided by the Vedas. And the intelligent class of people who do study all these things, they're called the Vipras, Prabhupada points out, or the graduates of Vedic knowledge. Yes. You just graduated. Did you know that? On Sunday. But there's further to go. Oh, there's postgraduate, postgraduate. Eventually you got to go for the Nobel Peace Prize. Back to Godhead. Yeah. So anyway, Vipras, the Brahmins, the Vipras, they are they're the intelligent people who instruct society, give guidance to the society in terms of the different branches of Vedic knowledge. There's even, Prabhupada says, there's even a department of military education. Yeah, so it's really broad. So then Srila Prabhupada in the second paragraph goes into a very interesting discussion that there is a little difference between Vipra and Brahmana. That's interesting. The Vipras are into karma kandya. The Brahmanas are spiritual. Of course, there are different levels of Brahmanas, but generally the real Brahmanas are into spiritual things. And even if they don't know all about them, but they want to learn about them. That's what they're attracted to. Spiritual things, the Brahmanas, because Brahma Janatiti Brahmana. A Brahmana is someone who knows Brahman. Yes, that's what Brahmana means. That a Brahman is a person who knows Brahman. I mean, it makes quite simple sense if you think about it. So yeah, but the Vipras, they're into karma kandya and material advancement and all that sort of thing. Yeah, okay. So this is in the second paragraph. Yeah, this is the difference. The difference between being into karma khandya, or fruit of activity, or into spiritual knowledge of transcendence. And this is, at least on the immediate level, this is called jnana khandha. Jnana khandha is higher than karma khandha. And it leads to, or involves, or leads to, or involves, kind of, they're very much related. Upasana khandha. We should know there are different khandhas. There's karma khandha, jnana khandha, there's upasana khandha. These are different khandhas, sections of the Vedas which have different orientations, you could say. Yeah. Yeah. So, upasana. So upasana khandha. What's upasana khandha? Well, it's an interesting point, and it's mentioned here. Upasana means worship. But upasana khandha, it's not just worship of the Lord. It's also worship of demigods. But it culminates in devotional service, worship of the Lord, devotional service to the Lord, upasana khandha. So in a certain sense, it can be said, it could be said possibly, that the process of Krishna consciousness is upasana khandha, because it's a system of worship. But actually, generally, upasana khandha includes the worship of demigods. Yeah, for material purposes. Right. So Prabhupada makes the point that when you become expert in upasana khandha, when you become an expert brahmana, then you are called a Vaishnav. You're not just a brahmana any longer. Then you're called a Vaishnav. Yes. So that's a very important point. So these Vaishnavas, they're engaged in service of the Lord, studying the Bhagavatam in so many ways. And doing so much devotional service. The science of devotional service is very dear to the Vaishnavas. And the Bhagavatam is, in terms of knowledge, it is the mature fruit of Vedic knowledge and is superior subject matter above the three khandhas, namely karma, jnana, and upasana. Bhagavatam, because what does the second verse of the Bhagavatam say? Who can tell without looking at their book? Because we discussed this. We really did. Second verse, chapter 1. Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nimatsaranam satam. Vejam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapa trayon mulanam. Srimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite Kimva Paraya Ishvara. Something. Yeah. How does it, what's the last line? Srimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite Kimva Paraya Ishvara. Yeah, just tell us the translation. The last Sanskrit. Ishvara. Yeah, something like that. Yes, so Srimad Bhagavatam begins by completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. So Upasana Kanda, it's just any worship of any deity. It culminates, highest level is Krishna consciousness, worship of the Lord. But it includes demigod worship, etc. So Krishna consciousness here, Prabhupada's distinguishing, or that verse 2 of chapter 1 is distinguishing between Krishna consciousness and other types of worship or religious activities. Okay, so then, devotees, there's a third paragraph too. Well, okay. Prabhupada just gets a little bit into Karmakanda. Amongst the Karmakanda experts, the Jatak expert Vipras, Jatak, yeah, referring to birth, Jata karma, things connected with the birth of the child. So amongst the Vipras, who are the Karmakanda experts, the Jatak expert Vipras are very good when it comes to the birth of a child. Do the right ceremonies, and they can figure out astrologically what the future of the child's going to be and all these types of things. Right, so yeah. So therefore they can tell what's going to happen, as we've just been reading in these other verses. He's going to be like this, he's going to be like that. And finally, they had so much insight. Parikshit's just been born. We don't know exactly how old he is, but he might, the oldest he'd be, I mean, he's probably just a matter of days old. Yeah. But still, they know how he's going to die. Whew. That's high level in that field. Yeah. All right. So yeah, they can calculate all these things, and then when they did that, Prabhupada explains, Maharaj Yudhisthira then rewarded them. Gold land, villages, grains, cows, and all sorts of things which are useful for living. And Prabhupada says, yeah, it's really interesting. There is a need for such Vipras. Prabhupada saying, we need such Vipras who can do such predictions astrologically. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Yeah. And if those expert Vipras are paid by the government, then they can give free advice. They don't need to hassle the people for getting donations, which otherwise is generally the case. Right. So yeah, then they can focus on their particular science without having to worry about how am I going to eat, which, if it really becomes difficult to eat, then it's very difficult for people to focus on what they're meant to do in life, their occupation. Okay, so verse 30. Wow, that's interesting. There's a slight difference in translation. The child would become famous in the world as Parikshit, or examiner, because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus he would come to constantly contemplate him. Right, so we mentioned the other day actually that that the word Parikshit means one who's examining, one who's searching, looking for. And when he was in the womb, he saw the Lord. The Lord came to protect him, the size of a thumb. But the Lord was so amazing. Parikshit was so deeply struck by the Lord and how the Lord saved him, but he didn't really know who it was. So then he would, a lot of the time in his life, he'd go around looking. Is this the person I saw? No, it's Jai Krishna Das. That's nice, but a little disappointing. Is this one? Is this the person I saw? No, it's Kishore Das. What to do? But that's what he did. He went around examining, looking, where is that person who just fascinated and just overwhelmed him, actually, by saving his life. Yes, so, okay. So therefore, Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that Parikshit, his contemplation on the Lord, was constantly with him. Once the impression of the transcendental form of the Lord is fixed in your mind, you can never forget him. That's good. That's interesting. Sure. Right. So therefore, child Parikshit was in the habit of examining everyone to see whether he was the same personality he first saw in the womb. But no one could be equal to the Lord. Yeah. So in other words, he didn't really find him. At least during those earlier years when he was searching. And then, so the point is being fixed on the Lord. If you're fixed on the Lord, even if he's not physically present, but the Lord is constantly with you if you're fixed on him. Yeah. So, in the second paragraph, Prabhupada refers to Srila Jiva Goswami, who says that every child, if given an impression of the Lord from his very childhood, certainly becomes a great devotee of the Lord, like Maharaj Parikshit. So, children, this is Jiva Goswami, children should be trained up like that. They really should. And then they'll become great devotees, like Maharaj Parikshit. So, you might not. Parikshit saw the Lord within the womb. And therefore for him, it was much easier to fix his mind on the Lord. But we may not be born or raised in such situations. So what then? What do? Do give up? Is it just can't do it, no point in trying? No. Prabhupada says, even if someone is not so fortunate as to see the Lord in the womb of the mother, he can be made so fortunate if the parents of the child desire him to be so, really desire him to be a devotee. Yeah. Just by training, someone can come to the perfect level, not just somewhat advanced, but actually the perfect level through training. And that's Krishna consciousness. And the example which is given, Prabhupada gives his own example. There's a practical example in my personal life. His father was a pure devotee. And when Prabhupada was 4 or 5, his father gave him Radha and Krishna forms. Yeah. And he used to worship them with his sister, Pashima. Yes. And in a playful way, Prabhupada says he worshipped those deities with his sister. And he used to imitate what they did in the temple, the nearby temple, the family temple. It was just couple of hundred meters away. So, by constantly visiting the temple and copying the ceremonies and applying that with his own deities, Prabhupada says, I developed a natural affinity for the Lord. Natural attraction, you can say, or tendency, or affinity. What would you say, affinity? Anyway, you can just say attraction. It's kind of a variation on that. And Prabhupada talks about his upbringing, his father, and then how he met Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, and then the upbringing that he had as a little child, 4 or 5 years old, and from that point. The upbringing that he had would sort of bear fruit when he met his spiritual father, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. And it really produced fruit in the form of Prabhupada doing amazing and wonderful things. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so that's there. That was verse 30. And here we go, devotees, with verse 31, which actually doesn't have a purport, but there's an analogy in it, you should note. So let's just read the verse. As the moon in its waxing fortnight develops day by day, day after day, so the royal prince Parikshit very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full facilities of his guardian grandfathers, means the Pandavas. They were all his grandfathers and they were all looking after him. Right. So, that's the end of that section. There is no purport to that particular verse. So let's go on to what is actually the last section, section F, the Rajasuya sacrifice of Yudhisthira. From verse 32 to verse 36. So let's do as usual. Read the verses just so you can follow the stream of thought of what's going on. So verse 32, just at this time, King Yudhisthira was considering performing a horse sacrifice to get freed from sins incurred from fighting with kinsmen. But he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus funds outside of fines and tax collection. Yeah, well, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, the treasuries were exhausted because those warriors, they don't fight for free. No, got to pay them all a lot because they're royalty. A lot of them are royalty. They're not going to risk their lives for 50 rands a day or something, or certainly not for free. Yeah. So, okay. Verse 32. Maharaj Yudhisthira, the state was really short of funds, so he wanted to do a horse sacrifice to get free. Well, he was, at this point, this is before he met Bhishma. Before he met Bhishma, at the time Bhishma was about to pass away. So Yudhisthira was thinking of doing a horse sacrifice. He needed some wealth, but there were no surplus funds outside of fines and tax collection. 33. Understanding the hearty wishes of the king, his brothers, as advised by the infallible Lord Krishna, collected sufficient riches from the north, left by King Maruta. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.